Last time, we covered the story of Ethan Couch, a young man diagnosed with a speculative mental illness called affluenza, who killed 4 people and injured 9 others in a devastating car crash. After hearing his story, we asked, should Ethan Couch be held responsible for his actions? We also asked, should we see Couch as an unwitting victim of his ethically lacking upbringing? Or should we see Couch as a person with full autonomy and rationality, who therefore deserves to be punished for his crimes? Know that these questions are still at the heart of today's video. We said that an Edwardian could argue that Ethan Couch may have a legitimate mental illness that could make him less responsible for committing his crimes. But, more importantly, an Edwardian may not remove responsibility from Couch entirely. Since the Edwardian framework allows for partial responsibility, Couch should still be seen as someone eligible for the sick role that should still be partially accountable for his actions. We in fact might need to hold Couch partially responsible so that we can preserve our ethical norms and values. Also in last video, I alluded to the fact that there are other thinkers who might disagree with Edwards' theory of moral responsibility for the mentally ill. We will get into those now. Levy, who writes on the moral responsibility of those with psychopathic disorders, is directly opposed to the Edwardian framework. In Levy's paper, The Responsibility of the Psychopath Revisited, 2 key questions are asked. Firstly, what makes someone a genuine moral agent? Secondly, do psychopaths have what it takes to be a genuine moral agent? Depending on the answer to the second question, we might be able to ascertain the degree to which psychopaths ought to be held morally responsible. Quickly, I want to provide some definitions, some philosophical definitions to guide our discussion. A moral agent is a kind of being that has rights and responsibility. A psychopath might be considered by Levy to be a moral patient, which is different than being a moral agent. A moral patient is afforded certain rights, but does not have any responsibilities. For example, we wouldn't send a baby to court for bad behavior because babies do not yet have the capacity for moral responsibility. But they still have a right to life that should be preserved. So they are therefore moral patients, not moral agents. Levy, unlike Edwards, says that there are certain kinds of mental illnesses, such as psychopathy, that undermine one's ability to have rational control for one's actions. It would therefore be unfair to hold them morally responsible, since they neither have receptivity to reason or reactivity to reason. Now, to clarify, we are defining rational control as the thing that allows for the holding of someone to be morally responsible. Rational control is built on receptivity to reason, which is the ability to understand how reasons work and go together. And we have reactivity to reason, which is the capacity to translate one's understanding of reason into action. Levy believes that there are certain kinds of mentally ill persons that lack rational control, since those with psychopathic disorders, for example, don't typically lack empathic distress and have an inability to complete what is called the moral conventional task. The moral conventional task is where you ask someone, if the government passed a law saying that it was okay to do a certain thing, would it still be morally permissible? You might ask the person, would it still be okay to murder someone if murder was illegal? Then you might ask, would it still be okay to jaywalk if that became legally permissible? If the mentally ill person could not separate the moral harms from conventional truths, then Levy argues that the person lacks receptivity to reason and therefore has no rational control and can therefore not be held morally responsible at all. Though a psychopath may know what they are doing, they may know that they are doing something considered to be wrong since it's against the rules, but they might not be able to fully understand why. If this is the case, then Levy argues that there are grounds to excuse them from moral responsibility altogether. You might argue that Ethan Couch wasn't psychopathic, so then Levy's responses are unrelated to Ethan Couch. But Levy's framework allows for the existence of persons with mental illnesses to be excused from moral responsibility altogether, on the basis of a lack of rational control. Remember that affluenza is a condition where someone lacks a proper ethical upbringing due to living an excessive lifestyle. If you replaced psychopathy with affluenza, Levy's arguments would hardly change at all. Let me again summarize Levy's fairness argument to see how we can replace affluenza with psychopathy. First, it is unfair to hold someone morally responsible if they lack control through no fault of their own. This is similar to the idea that ought implies can. Second, rational control requires receptivity to moral reasoning. 3. Psychopaths lack receptivity to moral reasons through no fault of their own. And 4, lastly, therefore, it is unfair to hold psychopaths responsible. So, as it stands, I have presented 2 arguments in regards to Ethan Couch's case. Edwards might hold Couch partially responsible, while Levy might absolve Couch entirely for his actions. What do you think? Do you think Ethan Couch should be held morally responsible?